All right, welcome to the show. This is the 2022 Dickson County Election Podcast, and I'm your host, Justin Spurlock. I have a radio show that I do every Saturday morning on WDKN, and also have a newspaper article that comes out every week in the Dickson Post about local history. And this particular podcast, the inspiration behind it was, it's election season, so I wanted to give the candidates a forum or place to talk a little bit about themselves and to give the voters a little information about them. And today, got a great guest. He's running for Juvenile Judge here in Dickson County. It's Mr. Jerred Creasy. Jerred, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Justin. I appreciate you having me on the show. I've enjoyed the other candidates' podcast, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you so much for coming in. I truly appreciate it. And we usually start by asking the candidates, the guests, to just give us a little information about their early life so we can get an idea about you, and then maybe take us forward and just kind of take us along a timeline of your life.
Yeah, I was born in rural Perry County, Tennessee. Moved to Benton County, Tennessee for the second grade. My father was he worked at DuPont in New Johnsonville, and we moved to Benton County to be closer for his work. Grew up in Camden, Tennessee, played sports, graduated high school there in 1988. Joined the Tennessee Army National Guard in 1987 when I was still in high school. Served in the Guard for 7 years. Went to college at the University of Tennessee at Martin. Graduated in 1992 with a bachelor's degree in public administration. From there, I went into the workforce. My first job was actually in the mental health field. I worked for Rutherford County Guidance Center for my first job. My wife and I married around this time, and not when I graduated from college, so we married young. She finished school at MTSU. We lived in Murfreesboro until I got out of school in Nashville School of Law. I did graduate in 1997 from the Nashville School of Law. We had moved about 2 years before I graduated. Once she graduated from MTSU, we had moved to Dickson County. So I've been here since 1995. Started practicing law in 1997. Originally practiced law downtown Nashville. Practiced with a good criminal defense attorney named Robert Vaughn. I was in that practice in Nashville for about 3.5 years, and then moved my practice to Dickson County. And I've been in the private practice of law since then, since 1997. So I've practiced in pretty much every court you can think of in Tennessee. So that's been my background. I really love the legal system. I know a lot of people maybe not crazy about the justice system, but I really love it, and I love the people that work in it.
So what brought you to Dickson County?
Well, my wife got a job teaching at East Hickman Middle School. Did not necessarily, since I looked to be practicing law in Nashville, did not necessarily want to go all the way back to Camden, Tennessee. And kind of upon coming into this community, we really liked it. We decided to move here, base our home here. And, we had a really, really good early Sunday school group at First Baptist Church, and really got to know a lot of members of this community, and we loved it, and we've been here ever since.
Every job that I've ever had, I guess I worked with kids, and it's always been, kind of an enjoyment. I worked a little bit for the Department of Children's Services, and now I'm a teacher. So, this particular office I think is very interesting. But I want to talk to you before we get kind of into the details about why you ran for this particular office. Maybe tell me kind of how you got into, or maybe why you chose, legal background.
It's something that I've always wanted to do, Justin. I guess I'm one of those kids who loved history as a young kid. And, when you're, say, a fifth grader and you love history, I became someone who was really interested in presidential history. And I noticed that, like almost every president going up to a point, they had a legal background and they started practicing law. And so that was what first got me interested in. I've been interested in the legal system almost as long as I can remember, and it just seemed to naturally work for me.
One thing I've noticed too about several of the candidates that I've talked to is several guys have gone to the Nashville School of Law, and my understanding is one of the reasons why you may choose to go there is because you can also work, and so it seems to me like that kind of is something very interesting to me because, somebody who wants to work while they're in school, that's tough, right? And so it kind of shows more of like a working class background. And for the guys around here, most of the guys that I've talked to who have gone into law have gone to school there. Maybe talk just a little bit about what it was like, working maybe and going to school at the same time.
It was interesting because you would work during the day, and then you would go to school basically at night. And it's a 4-year program, but there are a lot of practicing judges and practicing attorneys who teach at the Nashville School of Law, and they will tell you it's kind of a working background. It's not for everybody, but it's for somebody who wants to get out and practice law. You learn a lot of practical things that are helpful to you in your life. I had a lot of good professors there. There's a lot of good programs, Nashville School of Law, as well as after I finished with the Rutherford County Guidance Center and I took a clerk position with the same lawyer, Robert Vaughn, that I worked with later. You get a lot of practical experience. You get to go to court, file documents, and you see how that matches with what you're learning at school. It's a good environment. And the only other thing I'd really like to stress about that is, if you're working a 40-hour job and then you've got a lot of classwork to do and you're trying to get ready for a career, it is very, very time consuming. And it really helps you once you start practicing law because you were used to spending 60, 80 hours a week either at work or school. And so you putting the long hours in that's required is just something that comes a little more natural to you.
So let me ask you this: you're running for juvenile judge, and maybe some people out there don't really know what that is. Maybe we could start there because, like I said before, I work for the Department of Children's Services. I got a chance to kind of be in that courtroom a little bit. It's different than other courtrooms. It specifically deals with children, but I'll let you speak maybe a little bit more on what a juvenile court judge does and what the court is about. The
juvenile court judge has quite a few hats. A lot of people. And I think the community, when they think of juvenile court judge, they think of, delinquent petitions filed, a juvenile criminal act, and so the judge has to deal with, those criminal acts, make decisions based on that. That is part of what they do. They also have before them what's called dependent and neglected child petitions, and so when someone files a petition, whether it's a private person or the Department of Children's Services, and there's an allegation that a child is dependent and neglected, that needs some pretty immediate action. So that's part of what you do. You would deal with the Department of Children's Services. You would deal with anyone who's brought the petition, and you'd make rulings on that petition. That's an important part of what you do. You can also terminate a person's parental rights through the juvenile court, and so that's another thing you would do. You would hear cases to where a person has to prove that someone's parental rights should be terminated. So that's another important aspect of juvenile court. And along the way, another thing people don't realize is a lot of times paternity petitions arise in juvenile court. So if folks have children together but they weren't married, perhaps you might live together for 7-8 years, raise children together, and then all of a sudden maybe something happens. Rather than a divorce, since you weren't married, you still have to do something about your children. Custody determination has to be made. And so a lot of times those are done also by juvenile court.
Interesting. So you chose to run for this office, and like you said before, people go into law and then, get a law degree and pass the bar and all those things. I'm not an expert on that whole field, but, I know that once you do that, you can go into a lot of different things. I mean, you can maybe start a business, you can practice, you can, become a judge. A lot of different things that you can do. But you chose to run for this particular office, which has to do with kids. And first off, I just want to ask you, why did you decide to run for this particular office? Well,
for one, I think we all do things outside of our profession that are important to us. In my particular case, being a parent, being a grandparent, has always been a job that I've thought was probably number one priority for me. And I'm in a position now where my children are adults. My youngest is in college now. And so, I feel like I've gone through the parenting aspect, but I think it's very important dealing with children. Also, I've always been a baseball guy, a baseball coach. I've coached a lot of kids in this county in baseball. I've been president of a league. I just have this passion for kids, for children, and I felt like that, my legal background, my practice of law, the love of the law, the love of the courtroom, all fits in with what my other passion would be, which is kids, seeing kids do well. Really love to see Dickson County kids do well. I'm excited when different sports teams and different clubs at the school do well, and it's something I felt like that I had the experience for, the knowledge for, and, I really have a heart for those kids.
Talk to me a little bit more about sports, because this is a subject that I really enjoy. As people who are listening probably know, and I mention it all the time, that I coach. For years, I coached basketball at a couple of different schools, and now I coach soccer and truly love working with kids. It's, like I said before, most of the jobs that I've had have been where I work with young people, and something that I enjoy. And talk to me a little bit about your experiences of working with some kids here in Dickson County.
Love baseball. I'm probably considered a baseball guy. In fact, last year I was the voice of the Cougars at the high school baseball games and really enjoyed that. Baseball is a different sport. It's just something that I love. There's something about it that I love, and I love teaching kids that. I'm really interested in pitching, teaching kids how to pitch, helping develop proper mechanics. I love the success of a kid that you've worked with who maybe couldn't even throw strikes, and then they're appearing in games, they're having success, and it's really exciting. And I coached a travel team in Dickson County for a long time after being president of the league in Burns, and really competed against some of the best teams in the state. And for the most part, I had Dickson County kids, and that's something kind of unheard of, really, because you would gather kids from a lot of places, but we had a really good Dickson County base. Still to this date, close friends and connections through sports, through baseball. Love my baseball family.
That's always fun. I know, like you said, it's your job sometimes. The most important job is, as a parent, and working with these young people is so important because they're the next generation. And then, to me, it's if you're going to run for this particular office, juvenile judge, of course, number one, you're going to need to be qualified as a judge, right? You're going to need to have that particular background. So, but you're also going to be working with children, and so I think that adds sort of a separate element to it as well. Tell me a little bit about what makes you qualified, either, your past background experiences, maybe past jobs, things like that, but also your personality and your character. Some certain things about that might make you the right guy for this particular job.
Well, I guess I want to talk, first of all, if you're a certain age and you have a law degree, you can run for judge in the state of Tennessee. So, one of the things that I think makes it different for me is I've had a lot of experience. I've had 25 years of experience. I've been in courtrooms. And I've not just been in courtrooms in Dickson County, but I go all the way back to some of our good circuit judges. I've tried a lot of cases. We've got, we had Judge Bob Birch. We had Alan Wallace. We currently have Judge Larry Wallace, Suzanne Lockhart-Master. These are good judges. I've had a lot of chance to learn from each judge. You see a particular style. I've learned from what Judge Jackson did in juvenile court years ago. We had Judge Durwood Moore in general sessions court. You can take a little bit from everybody. And one of the things I've enjoyed through the juvenile court process really is, our surrounding counties have a couple of really good long-time juvenile court judges. Humphreys County has Tony Sanders, who's done an excellent job down there for years. Cheatham County, they've had Judge Phil Maxey, been on the bench for years. I've been in those courtrooms, and I've seen the way they handle court. So I'm able to pick a little bit from everyone that I've been in front of, and I think that's pretty beneficial. You get to see what works and maybe what doesn't work.
When you decide to run for an office like this, I'm sure that takes a lot of consideration, and I'm sure you thought about it for a long time, and you've got probably a lot of reasons why you did this. But what I've really noticed is that, people who are running against an incumbent, usually have some sort of an idea of something that they might want to do that's maybe different, or maybe they feel like is better than what's been done in the past, maybe in that particular seat or that particular office, or maybe just kind of overall the way that that job has been done. What would you do differently or maybe better than what's been done in the past here in that role as juvenile judge?
I guess I'm going to talk about things that I would say differently, and differently really is a scope. And I don't want people to think that I'm attacking anybody's character. You know, you're running a race and you have to run against someone. I'm running against an incumbent who's been the judge for 8 years. And he's a nice guy, and I don't really have a problem with him. From what I understand, he was a fantastic teacher, and he was very successful in this county in getting kids to appreciate literature. However, there's a different philosophy that I have. I mean, I come more from a military background as a coach. I feel like accountability, personal responsibility, consequences for actions, that those are important things to me. Those are very important. I think that sometimes you've got to hold people accountable for their actions. And so what would I do differently? I think that's the biggest difference you would see from what the current system is. Maybe if someone don't think people should be held accountable for their actions, maybe if they think, it should be a lenient procedure, then, I'm probably not for them. I'm for the person who says, I learned my best lessons in life probably being held accountable for my own actions. And I just think that's probably the biggest difference. I mean, if I could say one thing that's the biggest difference, it's that.
Talk to me a little bit more about something that I heard you say there in your answer. I think being a parent is very important to you, and definitely the lessons that you learn from being a parent, and probably also from your own parents, would probably apply here. But talk to me a little bit about how that sort of being a parent and having to deal with those issues might, help you be a good juvenile court judge.
Well, one of the things, I guess, and part of this, may be a little bit of what your faith background is, but when you hold someone accountable for their actions and their consequences, especially when you're dealing with your children, for example, or if you're dealing with someone else's children, when I was coaching, you're holding them accountable for actions. Sometimes there's some consequences, and you don't do it because you don't love them or because you want to see them punished. You do it because you do love them and you want them to be better. You want them to do better. You want them to be more successful. And to me, that's just an approach that I was raised to believe works. I raised my children to believe that works. I coached my baseball teams to believe that works. I speak to thousands of clients in my career who have parenting decisions to make, and what are we doing? Those are things that I share with people because I think it's important.
Talk to me a little bit about, I'm an old government teacher, and I think a lot about the different branches of government, right? So you have, the legislative branch, the executive branch, and then you've got the judicial branch, and they all do different things. And, one thing that I've noticed from interviewing all the different candidates is that, if you're running for a county commission seat or maybe a seat in the state house, your political issues are going to be important because you're going to be working with other people to pass laws and things like that. And then if you're running for some sort of executive position like, county mayor or something like that, you got a whole different set of problems and issues to deal with. But when you're running for judge, it's very unique in my opinion because it's not necessarily important what what the hot button political issues are of the day, whatever it may be. Here lately it's been, Second Amendment gun control and abortion rights and things like that have been real hot button issues, but it's not really the judge's job, especially at this level, to, sort of have a position on those things. It's really the judge's job to review the laws. And so talk to me a little bit about what that's like and how that would be if you were to get this job, as far as what would be important as far as what a judge does and the temperament that a judge has to have, because that's sort of a different political office than the other ones, right?
Yes, sir. The judicial branch is completely different, and one of the things that you want to do is, I think fairness is one of the most important things you can have as a judge. I think the citizens of Dickson County want to know, when I go into court, was I treated fairly? You want to be treated fairly. Now, I mean, obviously there's a lot of times people want to be treated better than fairly, or they want to, get some benefit. But I think everybody can respect someone who applies the law, that knows the law, has been around the law. You know how courtrooms should work. And don't get me wrong, I think a courtroom, you should hold court. It's court. And so that makes it a little different. But I mean, you have a vast knowledge of the law. I do. You're able to review. We know what the law is before us. And then what's important is you get a set of facts and circumstances. That's part of it. You've got to sometimes make a ruling on facts and circumstances. But then another part of it is you have to apply the facts and the law with what's in front of you. And you want to do what's just, what is fair. In juvenile court, the main focus should always do what is in the best interest of the child. Whether it's a criminal case, whether it's a dependent neglected case, whether it's a termination, you have to really say what's in the best interest of the child. Not really what's in the best interest of everyone else, what's in the best interest of the child. And that's where, my philosophy is, just like I said earlier, sometimes what's in the best interest of the child is to hold that child accountable, help teach them some personal responsibility, give them assistance when needed, punish them if that's what it calls for, but treat everyone fairly that comes in. Apply the law, apply the facts, treat them fairly. I think that's the most important thing that a judge can do.
I've gotten the chance at this point to interview a couple of different guys who are running for judge spots, and in particular, for General Sessions Judge, there have been two candidates that have come in and sit down and talked, and really enjoyed both of those conversations. And one thing that they both did very well was they explained to us a little bit about, not only what General Sessions Court is, but maybe some of those particular cases that they might run into, so that to give the general public maybe a better idea of what kind of goes on in that courtroom. And I know you've already touched on it a little bit, but could you give me maybe just a couple of examples of some cases that you might preside over if you were to win this position? What are some examples of some cases that are heard there in juvenile court?
Well, you would get, I guess first we could talk about, if you're a juvenile, you're not going to any other court. I mean, even for example, you get a traffic citation. You could get a speeding ticket as a 16, 17-year-old child, anything below 18, and you would come into a juvenile court on a traffic offense. You could be charged with committing a crime, and if you're a juvenile, they're not going to take a case against you in general sessions or circuit court. You would start off with a petition for delinquency in juvenile court. So it could be a realm of any types of crimes, all the way from, I think a lot of times when we think of juveniles, we think of, vandalism or, something like that. But it could be, if you're under 18 and you're charged with an aggravated assault, a home burglary, a home invasion, stealing a car, it runs the gamut. You would have those in your court, and you would be charged with, unlike a jury system, you would listen to those cases, and then first of all you have to be making a determination of whether or not somebody's guilty, and then you have to worry about what you do sentencing wise. And so that's one example of what you would see. Then you get some sad cases. I mean, sad cases that tear at your heart, because they come into your court and you've got a child who the Department of Children's Services or a private party that's filed the petition claims that this child is dependent and neglected. Well, you already know there's an issue there. What's going on? Something's wrong. You have to try to determine whether or not that this is a dependent and neglected child, and then if it is, hey, what can we do about it? What can we do? And so, you have to really be on top of helping to provide services in those situations, and once again, trying to look out for what's in the best interest of that child. And so that's a type of case that you would get. You would obviously have something similar to custody determinations in Chancery Court. If you're in there and it's started off as a paternity petition. I mean, you're having to decide, hey, we're not here because somebody's saying that the child is dependent or neglected. We're here to determine what the parenting plan should be, what type of custody arrangement should we have. And that's something that I've been doing for, many years. That's an important thing that you have to do. That's an important aspect of it. And then probably one of the things that really you take serious, Justin, is cases that involve termination of parental rights, because people have a constitutional right to raise their children, okay? And when they're before you and someone's trying to terminate those parental rights, you have to take that seriously. And you still have to do, at the end of the day, what is best for the child. And I've seen so many different times through the years, a different set of facts may lead to a different result. But our legislature puts out a set of criteria that's required to terminate somebody's parental rights. And if that burden is properly met, then, if you have to terminate someone's parental rights, I think that's what you have to do. And I'm going to follow the law.
I saw a friend of mine the other day, and I asked him, he's not running for office this time around, but he had given me some indication in the past that he might do that. And so, I kind of asked him, why'd you choose not to run this time? And he said, well, the time just wasn't right. The time wasn't right. Maybe in the future, and so that kind of leads me to my next question is, why did you choose to run now? That maybe could have run in the past, or maybe could decide to run in the future, but for whatever reason you chose to run right now in 2022. And I'm just kind of curious as to why now is the time.
Well, for one thing, this position is an 8-year term. So, take it seriously, because whatever we decide as a county, it's going to be that way for 8 years. So, you fast track 8 years ago. I just mentioned earlier that my youngest son just graduated in 2021, and he's just completed his freshman year in college. So, you back that up, he's 19 years old. 8 years ago, that's not a good time for me to run for judge at the time. That's not a good time to run. And at that point in time, you had other things going on. And what your children were doing, what your kids were doing, were important to me. And I didn't think that was the right time. The next available time is now. And I'm in a position in my life that, number one, I've been in practice for a long time. I'm in private practice. My children have, pretty grown. They're in college. The timing just seems right for me. It's like you want to do something with the experience that you have, both as a parent, as a person in the community, in the legal profession. You want to give something back, and to me, now is the time. I have the time, I have the opportunity, and I want to do this. I want to feel like that I've done something for Dickson County, because Dickson County's been pretty good to me since I've been here.
So a little more details about the specific position that just kind of popped into my head. But, so this particular court, is this a court that covers all of Dickson County? And also, where does this court meet?
This court does cover all of Dickson County. Everyone in Dickson County has the ability to cast their vote for juvenile judge. Court meets at the courthouse in Charlotte, Tennessee, and if you haven't been by there yet, we have a new courthouse. It's fantastic. That's where the juvenile court meets at now. It's inside the main courthouse. It's kind of put all of the judicial system in one spot, so that's where juvenile court meets also.
This is usually the point in the show where I give the candidates a chance to talk about, their political issues or their platform. And I know we've already talked about several things, and as I mentioned earlier, when you're a judge, it's a little bit different. But if you were giving, a speech, or if you were talking to folks, kind of hit on some of your major points on your platform, and some of the major reasons on why you're running, or even anything that we haven't talked about yet that you would want to make sure that the voters hear about.
A lot of it are things that we've talked about, but I can't really be clear enough that I am not running to try to be mean or because I don't like somebody. I'm running because I feel like I have the right temperament for this position. my value system is a little different. It's one that goes back to accountability and personal responsibility, and I think that's something that would be beneficial for the community. I think I can be very fair-minded and have a wealth of experience in custody cases, which are important in that court. I have a lot of courtroom experience, and I think that this court should be treated like court. I mean, I think that, court is important. I want to bring back the idea of that we're holding court and that I'll treat you fairly. I want to do a good job for the citizens of Dickson County, and I think if you need to hold someone accountable, that's something that you have to do. And that's kind of my platform. I guess maybe I'm a little more conservative than as far as background, but that's it. That's the way I was raised, and I think there's a lot of people in this county that were raised that way. And we hear a lot of times people like, "Man, I kind of miss some of the good old days." Well, a lot of people do. A lot of people do, and I think that we have the ability to do that. I think that's what people want to do, but that's my platform. That's why I want to be the juvenile court judge.
I had kind of a unique experience. As I mentioned before, I worked for the Department of Children's Services, and now I'm a teacher. And when I worked for the department, I used to go around to different courts and had the opportunity to be in several courtrooms all across the state, even sometimes out in East Tennessee. And, you mentioned temperate, and you run into different judges, right? So I'd run into some that were real fiery, the kind that you'd say would throw the book at everybody, real loud. And sometimes I'd run into, other judges that were kind of timid, kind of quiet, real, maybe just the opposite, right? So you've got like this spectrum. Kind of where would you fall on that spectrum of, being, kind of real easy or, kind of being real hard? Where do you fall in on that?
I'm probably a lot more towards the middle of the two temperaments that you describe. I mean, I've been before a lot of judges that are fiery, and sometimes the fire takes away from the message because, while you might instill some fear, you're like, did we get the message? Other ones that it seems like, they get run over. They're too easy, they're too lenient. I definitely don't think I would be the too easy, too lenient type. That's not my personality, and people know me, know that's not my personality. And so I would be somewhere kind of in the middle of that. And it's kind of like, there's an old saying where people used to say, sometimes somebody needs a kick in the pants, sometimes they need a hug, sometimes they need a pat on the back. I think the ability to do all three is important in this position. And I'd like to think that I have the ability to do all of those and treat people with what the expected outcome should be.
Let's talk a little bit about Dickson County for a minute because, I think it's a great place to live, and obviously you've raised your kids here, and so you've chose to be here. You probably could have lived in a lot of different places, and as you mentioned before, you live closer towards the river, and you, at any point in time, you probably could have moved back that way, but you've chose to kind of stay here, and I appreciate you being here, and I love Dickson. I've had my chance to move away and come back, and, it's really becoming, a really interesting place. We've got a lot of fun things happening. There have been a lot of, festivals and things like that. I think coming up here pretty soon, we've got the Dickson Street Festival. I saw something this morning about Barbecue Bash. There was a fun thing out at Promised Land recently. Talk to me a little bit about just your love of Dickson County and why you enjoy being here, and then maybe we can kind of get into some of these events that I've been kind of running into you at, and we can talk about maybe some places you might be down the road.
What I love really maybe the most about Dickson has been the people. I've had good experiences all throughout Dickson. It's hard coming in, it's hard coming in practicing law in an area where you didn't grow up with everybody. But in another aspect, it's kind of good because you didn't grow up with everybody, and so, they take things a little bit differently. But it's definitely been the people. I've enjoyed raising my children here. I have 2 grandchildren right now that I don't see them going anywhere else. I think my daughter will be staying in Dickson County and raising children with her and her husband. I've enjoyed the school systems. I really have enjoyed the people that I've met. there are some great churches all around Dickson County. I've had an opportunity to go and visit at a lot of those. I mean, it's just a good place. It's kind of, it's bigger than some of the small town rural areas that maybe my family grew up in, but it's not quite, Nashville. I mean, it's a great mix. We have plenty to do in Dickson, and it's still small enough that you feel like you can know a lot of people, and I like that about them. Dickson's somewhere where you can still talk to your neighbors every afternoon. I live in a great neighborhood. I know all my neighbors. I step out. We talk. I love that about this community.
You've been awesome to come in here and just kind of give me an answer to all of my different questions. And, I've pretty much run through most of the standard questions that I kind of ask everybody. But is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to make sure that the voters know? Because this is, in my opinion, a good way to get the information out. And I know a lot of people have been listening. And, if anybody's tuning in, is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you might want to hit on?
I think that I have hit the platform. I just hope the people know what I stand for, what I would like to do, and if that's something that you're like-minded with and you think that would be a good thing for our juvenile court and for our community, then I would appreciate your support and your vote on August the 4th, or if you decide to vote early, that's July the 15th starts early voting.
Do you have any upcoming special events, or do you plan on going to anything in the near future that people might that are listening that might get a chance to see you in person?
Yeah, any time that there's an event, I'm going to try to go. I know we've got the street festival coming up. I'm pretty excited about an event coming out in July in Burns. I mean, that's a pretty good event, and I live in the Burns community, so I would love to go to those. I would love to go to the Dixon Street Festival. I'm really trying my best. My son is playing ball this weekend, but I really would like to get back Saturday night, if possible, to Sladen, because they have a little music in Sladen on Saturday night.
Cool.
And I'm hoping to be able to get back for that because I love those type of events.
Well, you're probably going to run into a lot of people, and you probably already have, that are going to, ask you, a lot of different questions. And, one thing that I like to do on this show is to give people a chance to give me their elevator pitch. And I've always liked that. I had a principal years back that, we would have our little elevator pitch to talk about certain things, and that was just kind of her thing. But I thought there was some value to not only giving you a chance to kind of expand on it, but if you were to run into somebody out here on Main Street and or at the barbecue festival in Burns next month, let's use that as an example, and they run into you and you've only got a few seconds to talk to them, what would you say if they said, Jerred, why should I vote for you?
Well, I would tell them, first of all, who I am, because a lot of times people forget that. But I say, I'm Jerred Creasy. I'm a candidate for Juvenile Court Judge in Dickson County. I'm a parent, I'm a grandparent, and a veteran. I practiced law in every level of court in this state since 1997. My core values are faith, accountability, personal responsibility, and fairness. That I want to treat others the way you want to be treated. And that I think all decisions in the office I'm running for should be based on the best interest of the child that's in your court. And that I would appreciate your support and vote on August the 4th.
So I love the hat that you're wearing today. It says Jerred Creasy on it. I love hats, and I've seen a lot of cool hats, and people may want to contact you because they may want to get one of those hats, or they may want to put a sign in their yard, or they may have heard something today where they said, I want to ask him one more question about that. Justin, you messed up and didn't ask him a question. I want to ask him. How can somebody get a hold of you? Okay,
first of all, my email is Jerred Creasy, and it's JerredCreasy, JerredCreasy@gmail.com. That's an easy way. You can send me an email and I'll respond. The other thing is you can contact me on Facebook at Jerred Creasy. I also have a group that's called Jerred Creasy for Juvenile Court Judge. You can get in there in the group and you can see things that I've posted, maybe events I've gone to, and a little bit about my platform. Or you can, those are the easiest ways to reach out to me. If you can send me a text message, I'll give my cell number out. It's 615-519-3821. Send me a text message. Call me. If I've noticed that there's a lot of calls and sometimes my voicemail gets overflowed, so send me a text message. Hey, I'd like to hear from you. Call me back, and I'll get to you as soon as I can.
Yeah, and I appreciate you being so willing to talk to people, and that's one of my favorite things about this show that that we've been able to do is just get the information out to people, and everybody's been so willing to talk to folks, and I can't thank you enough for just being open and willing to do this, and it's been a lot of fun to me, and again, I just appreciate it.
Thank you, Justin. I've enjoyed it, and I've enjoyed hearing from the other candidates also.
Well, let's go ahead now at this point, and I want you to tell them one more time. What is the office that you're running for? Who's eligible to vote for that? And if you know the dates off the top of your head, if you could provide those.
Yeah, it's Jerred Creasy. It is the Juvenile Court of Dickson County is the position I'm running for. Anyone over 18 years of age and is registered to vote can vote. If you turn 18 before Election Day, on or before Election Day, you just have to be registered to vote by July the 5th. July the 5th is a big date. You have to be registered to vote by July the 5th. So all my friends out there that turn 18 afterwards, if you go ahead and register to vote, but you can show that you'll be 18 by that date, you'll still be able to vote. That's anyone in Dickson County who is registered to vote can vote for this position. Early voting, July the 15th. Election Day, August the 4th.
I got one last question for you, and I'm going to put you on the spot. You have no idea this question's coming. I did not tell you I was going to ask you this question. But you're sitting right now in Redbird Realty's office. And that's my real estate company. And this is our business, and we came up with that name. And I'll just be honest with you. The reason we're called Redbird Realty is because we like the St. Louis Cardinals. That's our baseball team. And you mentioned that you're a big baseball fan. And so before I let you go, I want to ask you, who's your favorite baseball team?
It's a complicated question. You'd think it would be easy. I grew up a Cincinnati Reds fan. Pete Rose, Johnny Bench. That was my team, the Reds.
That was a good team, wasn't it?
And once the Reds...
the Big Red Machine.
Once the Big Red Machine was finished and everybody got rid, they changed ownership, I've just kind of floated around and more than anything just love baseball. Love to go to... I will say this, if this helps. I would rather go watch a baseball game at St. Louis than any other ballpark.
It is a fun place to go and visit.
Those people love baseball.
They do. And this year is a special year because we've got so many players retiring, including Albert Pujols. And so I'm hoping to get up there to a game. Because of COVID and stuff, we broke a tradition where I had gone every year for, a dozen years or more going to a game. And then because of COVID, didn't get to go. And this, I think, is the year that you can't miss. This would be a good year to go.
Absolutely. And if you live in the Middle Tennessee area and you like baseball, ever wanted to see a baseball game, you go to St. Louis or you go to Atlanta and you're going to have a really, really good time.
Atlanta has a really nice new stadium. And, of course, they just, won the World Series. So, I'm not an Atlanta Braves fan, but love their stadium, admire that team. I think a lot of them. They're good.
Since the new stadium came out, they have a surrounding area that is just fantastic. Restaurants. It's a great place to mingle.
Been there?
Yes, sir.
It's pretty nice. I haven't actually had a chance to go, but I've seen pictures. It's pretty fantastic, isn't it?
It is. It's a great place to go watch a ball game and have a good time.
Well, again, thanks for coming. Thanks for answering my goofy question here at the end because, one baseball guy to another, I was just kind of curious as to who you rooted for. So thanks for answering that, and thanks for being here. And especially thank you to all of the people who are listening. You guys have given me a lot of great feedback. We've got tons of views, and I appreciate that. The goal of this whole podcast was just to give you some more information. So if there are any other candidates out there that you haven't heard from yet, reach out to them and tell them about the show. They may not have heard about it. I've tried to reach out to as many people as I can. It's an open forum. Anybody who wants to be on the show, all you have to do is reach out. And once we figure out the date and the time, we can make it happen. Reach out to me on social media, send me a message, or you can email me at coachspurlock@gmail.com. And we can, like I said, we can make that happen. Thanks to everybody for listening. Thanks to Jerred Creasy for being here today.